Welcome back. This is lesson 20, women's rights. After this lesson, you should be able to understand in much greater detail the different waves of the women's rights movement. We begin with a quote. A girl has the power to go forward in her life. And she's not only a mother, she's not only a sister, she's not only a wife. This is the idea that your value as a woman is not relative to your relationship with anyone else. Not because you're a mother, it's not because you're a sister, it's not because you're your wife, it's not your relationship to anyone else that gives you value as an individual. You are a valuable individual regardless. We have some general notes to begin with. So do please read over these general notes before you continue on. This is some background information about the women's rights movement. Once you have read over those notes, we're going to take a deeper look into the first wave. So here we are with the first wave. And there are some brilliant cartoons on the subject. Many of the cartoons, such as the one shown here, are meant to create some emotional response in the viewer. And the viewer looking at this cartoon is meant to become sympathetic towards the man who is in this home trying to do non-traditional gender roles and seems overwhelmed by it. And at the same time, the woman is trying to, at that time in the 19th century, take part in non-traditional gender roles by having employment outside the home, by becoming more active in the community politically and socially. And the cartoonist is one of those conservative voices that is resisting change because they're worried that the change is going to destroy the fabric of the family and then ultimately destroy society, suggesting that change isn't always good. There's some interesting signs in the back. Here's another cartoon that is promoting the same ideological perspective. A suffragette's home. The man comes home and there's a sign that there's a rally for votes for women, and there's a little sign attached to it, I'll be back soon. Man comes home from work, we can presume. His wife, their mother, isn't at home mothering. She's outside protesting. And because of that, after a hard day's work, he comes home and finds the children in a state of neglect. Their socks need to be mended. Their stomachs are probably empty. The scandal could have started a fire. So here's a league opposing women's suffrage. So one of the concepts that we have to wrestle with in this first wave of feminism is that there were forces within society opposed to the change. Conservative forces within society suggesting that this change would undermine society. And it was dangerous, and it was neglectful, and women were abandoning their families and their children if they wanted the right to vote. That's the message here. Because she wants the right to vote, she can't be a good mother at the same time. Pretty simple, pretty dangerous message, resisting change. So we do have a brief history of the waves of feminism here, and therefore I have some more notes here for you on the first wave of feminism. And yeah, you're welcome. So the textbook talks about women's rights in a very limited way. Even women's rights have evolved since that textbook was made in 2007, 2008. So we need to update it. And here's a more comprehensive look at that first wave of feminism. Here's another cartoon. And this cartoon really captures the battle that many, mostly women, had to endure in order to achieve the right to vote. Treatment of political prisoners under a liberal government. So the government was liberal, not in the Liberal Party of Canada sense, but in the liberal sense of we value democracy. So in America, in the early 20th century, under democratic governments, they tortured women that were caught protesting. So what were they doing here? They're forcing her to eat. She was trying to protest by, as many did, by attempting a hunger strike to show that women had been marginalized, that children had been marginalized, and that the solution was to give women the right to vote so that they could better shape the relationship between government and governed. But the state wouldn't allow her to have a hunger strike. They forced her to eat, as you can see with that tube down her throat. She's being held down. Now, this isn't just a cartoon based on fiction. This is a cartoon based upon history. So there's a link there from a Women's Journal article that can tell you more about the context surrounding that photo, that cartoon. The cartoon should be inspiring you to learn more. We also had the idea that women living in wealth had a responsibility to children living in poverty. And the only way that women in wealth could help those women living in poverty and those children living in poverty is to get the right to vote. Now, women had to combat generations of resistance to achieve their desired reforms, and that's what this cartoon's looking at. Interestingly enough, there wasn't unity among all women. Here you have a woman that is campaigning for the right to vote. Here you have another woman that's campaigning for the right to vote, but this woman is protesting and trying to say, no, 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 not for you. Votes for white women. So there were some individuals who tried to suggest that if white American men could extend the vote to white American women, then that would be extending more power to white people. So at a time when the civil rights movement was still underway and African American people were gaining some liberty but still not equal, some white Americans were concerned with the growing power of black America. And some white women suggested that in order to keep white dominance of America, white women needed to get the right to vote, but not non-white women, only white women. So that's what's happening here. A very interesting cartoon because we often think of female suffragettes as being glorious women fighting for all women. Many of them were only fighting for white women. And we also have to keep in mind that not all women wanted the right to vote. That's what this article and this article tell you about. Some women argued that women have a very special sphere, a different sphere, a non-political sphere, that the political arena was no place for women. And that's what's happening in this photograph. We have more cartoons too about women's sphere against the idea of politics being not a worthy arena. Now here you have the opposite. You have a cartoon that shows the goal to be quite clear. We're going to elect some people to the state house, and then we might get some women to become mayors of some liberal cities. Then we might have some women become U.S. representatives and governors, and then senators. Then we might have a woman in the cabinet of the president. We might even get a woman on the Supreme Court, and ultimately, one day, the goal is have a female president. And we have had women at each one of these levels except that one. So we have not had a female president in America yet. Clearly in Canada we have had a female prime minister in Kim Campbell, and we have a female head of state in the Queen. But in America they have not elected a female president through the Electoral College. I mean, Hillary won the popular vote, but that's another issue. So that's the first wave. The first wave was focused on political equality. Now we have the second wave, and we have some notes there about it. Second wave is about workplace equality. It's about sexuality. It's about reproductive rights. It's about equality within the family. And we got some photos that go along with that. Big moment will be birth control. And then we have the third wave. Some suggest that the third and the present fourth wave kind of merged into one. Third wave is focused on individualism. It has tried to redefine what it means to be a feminist. And third wave feminism embraces the idea of different narratives, different definitions, broadening their goal beyond just women rights, but gender rights is a big part of the third wave, including LGBTQ+. Now we have the fourth wave, which some would suggest begins in 2012. And the fourth wave is connected to the power of social media, power of the many hashtag movements, like hashtag #MeToo. And there are some links to continue that and some thoughts about it. Here's some summaries, highlights, main points, and some updates. Here's a cartoon that you can go back and challenge yourself to see if you can use your A1 skills on unpacking a ideological perspective surrounding the first wave and highlighting it as a 75th anniversary. Here's an updated cartoon looking at that second wave about employment rights, equality within the workplace, really good careers, an equal opportunity employer. You gotta fit through that cookie cutter thing, and that looks like an outline of a male, not a female. Now, could women fit through that? Could women have this body shape? Of course. That's not the message the cartoonist is sending. Oops, we went back in time there a little bit. Don't want to go back in time. We also have another cartoon here. Well, as the fellows say, as the fellows don't say, another day, another 75 cents. So this is a cartoon that's looking at the historic inequality of pay between men and women. Guys say another day, another dollar. Women say another day, another 75 cents. Maybe if they're lucky, maybe 60 cents, depending upon which industry they're in, which country they're in. So women are seen as less than men in many industries. And that's the cartoonist trying to promote that there. So we've had lots of celebrations. This is one back from 1977, looking at Women's Day. Another issue with women's rights would be sports. Hashtag equal play, equal pay. So, just yesterday in football, there was a quarterback for Kansas City that signed a 10-year contract for more than $500 million. So 508, I think, $1 million contract for 10 years. We don't see female athletes getting $50 million a year. And we have some amazing female athletes that don't get paid a fraction of that. And this this photograph is looking at sports like hockey, where we have some hockey players like Connor McDavid making 12-ish million a year before his all his endorsement money. $12 million, you could probably buy a team in the women's league, let alone pay a player. So here's some of the inequalities within sport for men and for women. Do you see any where the women make more? Because I don't. So there's some other links if you're interested in learning more about the inequality in sport. And there's some summaries about the right to vote. Here's a summary from a TED Talk about the right to vote. Anytime it's in that color, it's kind of like a mandatory watch. We would have watched it together in class. You need to, it's 5 minutes long. It's going to summarize the right to vote in America. And there's a great 12-minute one that talk about the milestones in the evolution of women's rights as well. Definitely take a look at that. Now, what happens when gender rights collide? So you have the right of women and you have the right of transgendered individuals. Well, we have transgendered individuals fighting in combat sports like MMA. And we've had one transgendered MMA fighter break the skull of her female opponent. So there is a debate happening in sport when transgendered women are in combat sports against other women. This is also a debate within sports like powerlifting and weightlifting, where transgendered athletes have set new world records, but others are suggesting that the world records should have an asterisk next to them. And that's being shown here. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, that's our look at women's rights. No doubt we could spend a lot more time looking at it, but hopefully there's some links there that'll inspire you to learn a little bit more.